I will give Robert a quick call. And then we can start on that.
Can you shoot coffee attacks to see if you need the link, please?
Sorry.
Can you shoot coffee attacks to see if you need the link as well? This is not.
We'll give Robert a quick call. And then we can start on that.
Can you shoot coffee attacks? Yeah, would you like me water?
Nothing.
Report post.
I got it. I walked the dog early. I saw the videos.
Didn't get out.
The end of it. Yeah, not really getting too much. I don't find it offensive. It seems to be, from what I gathered, more counties than.
Councilman Kavanaugh is going to be here any moment.
Awesome.
I'm sure he won't be offended if you start to intro the topic without him, but that is up to you, Chair.
Okay. I guess we can start.
If you're ready now to start, I will close the doors because it gets
Yeah, that's fine.
the turbine will was super loud.
Fine.
It's very.
Ready?
Yes.
Guess I'll call this meeting to order.
Let me do a roll call.
Yes,
Great. Councilmember Middleton,
present.
Councilmember Hotchkiss,
Present.
Councilmember Costi is absent, and Council President Matavetsky is here as an ex officio member. Representative John Solak, also present. Thank you.
Okay, so this is RL 24-150, excuse me, an ordinance to amend the city charter to eliminate as Director of Public Safety. And so I know that when you came up, thank you first for putting in the legislation. We always like to hear like different ideas about people's thoughts on how to make the city better. One of the things with this public safety, this and also city manager, what type of qualifications do you think like a person of with the public director of safety should have? And also, would it be like the chief? Would there still be a chief also? Or like what were you thinking?
Well, my thoughts on it were, you never hear, unless there's a terrible tragedy, which, is like once every 20 years or 10 years. You never hear any mayor, not this mayor or any other mayor, assert themselves as the director of public safety. They always defer to the police chief. So you wonder who's in charge. And a lot of people. And a lot of people, I mean, it's not a subtlety or nuance, it's actuality, that you have this position called the director of public safety. And that person is in charge. So I have yet to hear any mayor, I may be wrong, but even in like the American Civic Association. To say, I'm in charge here, this is what we're going to do. Instead, it's always, well, the chief or the police are doing a great job. So that's that. Now, how much of an expenditure would you have to make to have a full-time director of public safety? I don't know. The county's got an emergency management director. This would be half the time really is spent with grants. So, human resource background, grant writing background. Keep in mind, if you say, well, they've got to have a law enforcement background, keep in mind that IBM hired a guy, Lou Gerstner, as chairman of the board that was with RGR Nabisco. He didn't know computers from a cookie. And he saved IBM. IBM was 12 weeks away from running out of payroll worldwide. So to have the director of public safety, which is allocating human resources, getting in the transfer payments, accountability when there's a tragedy, but just everyday accountability. What went on in the weekend. For some reason, we don't have a police blotter like we used to have. Nobody knows what's happening in the city unless they care to release it. So this is the communication that I think you need. And I think you need a seasoned person, because what I would be curious to know, and I don't know it, how many people say over 42 or 43 years old are with the police department right now? You know what I mean? I mean, the imbalance between experience and novices is that gap is huge now. Never used to be that way. So you need someone that has the ability to say the buck stops with me, that the public can have confidence either way.
And so how you're saying that, so should it be like a vote, or like it would be like a hiring process, like they would go through the clerk's office?
Yeah.
Like just an example of like how like they would go through the clerks, or like would we have to like vote them in? Like how, like what were your ideas on that?
Well, you would, after you eliminated this, you would establish the director of public, it's already established, you would carry it forward to a paid position, which would be appointed by city council. And so it would be, I mean, I don't know the legalities of calling someone the police commissioner. I don't know that, but that's in essence what it would be.
So basically, is it like higher than the chief or on the same level?
No, in my way of thinking, he would be the chief's boss, yeah. He wouldn't do the micromanagement, the call of make the law enforcement calls, but I mean, just like in for New York is a bad example, but police commission doesn't, all the way down the chain, but but I mean, what this does, I think it rather than go around the same old ugly ground with irate citizens, the police chief this, the police chief that versus back the blue, you get someone in there that is neutral, not involved in
Politics?
yeah, mayor of politics, not involved with police unions. I mean, you just got too much of that in this town. I mean, I think a certain amount might be unescapable, but I don't see it, like, for example, I don't see it in any type of Johnson City or in Vestal, where the police play an activist role on who's gonna be mayor or who's gonna be on the town board. I don't see it there. I see it here.
So just like a separate non-political.
Well, it's political in the sense that council would appoint it,
Mhm.
unless you want it, I mean, I guess you gotta have a job description. Although it's not. It's just the word director of public safety, there's not much of a job description in the charter.
Did we determine that this would be another referendum?
Oh,
It was
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, it definitely will take
required.
it. Yeah, it would,
Both of them were there.
Mhm.
yeah.
And that's my point of it is that. Your only decision is to let the people decide, so it's not thing. And again, these are not, both of these issues are not radical proposals. They're already in play, already in practice. So, this is not somebody wanting to burn the house down. This is better management, and to tell you the truth, between the. You hear the term moving forward, well, between the compression of the national political agenda. And running the city, you're always in locked up here, and that's not the way it should be. At some point, it has to be broken, I mean, because these things are manufactured. Differences that, just are designed to push buttons. And now, you gotta say, well, why would Binghamton be so different that things that were elsewhere couldn't be applied here? That's the other thing, or are we just, are we just trying to create this never-ending chain of really what has been failure? I mean, I hate to tell you.
Well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, from the council's perspective, let's take this council and compare it to like a council in 1970. The council had charge of the hospital, council had charge of the school district.
Wow.
The city was 100% more in population, or thereabouts. So as the responsibilities of the council and the city have dwindled, the cities didn't get better. I mean, there's less to manage, and the city's getting worse. So I don't know. Maybe we gave up the two profit centers, the school district and the hospital.
Just to give you some background, Councilman Hotchkiss, anything that restrains an elected official's powers in any way requires a referendum.
Yeah, I
Even if
mean,
it's
that part I
An elected official,
Okay.
so you're replacing the mayor as director of public safety, potentially, that's the RL. Because you're constraining the mayor's powers, that's why it would require a referendum.
And one more thing on the referendums, I'm not so sure it has to be in a November or a primary election. Because when I drive through Lansing and I drive through all these towns in New York State, you see these signs, vote this way, vote that way. On all these town referendums, and they don't really line up with the general, or that sometimes they line up with the primary. So I'm not so sure that it has to be on a November ballot. Well, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. Yeah. But not having an election can be expensive too. Some guy can get in there and cost you a lot of money between elections later.
Does anybody have any other questions regarding that?
not
Oh,
for, not for the public.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm apologize for being late. So. Police commissioner and fire commissioner, the fire. Police and fire, are we trying to oversee over the chiefs of any kind, on both?
Yeah, we're getting a professional manager to allocate the resources, to get the grants in, to do all that. We're letting law enforcement do what they have to do with the accountability that the director of public safety is looking over them at all
Who
times.
does it now?
No, just
Mayor.
the mayor.
It's
has-
automatically given that title.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, like, who looks for the grants and does all that? Like, he has someone that he doesn't. The police department does that. Police department.
I mean, he has assistants that have grant writing experience that I believe he
most of-
relies on.
But aren't those people usually, the assistants are usually employed by police department or even fire department?
No, I'm talking about directly within the mayor's office.
What power does a public safety? Because I mean, or in other words, if. For these fire commissioner and police, what power do they have to? Do they hold that aspect of, you say accountability? Do they hold a power over like the fire, police, or the fire?
No, it's union stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
good.
union.
Still union, Mr. Union?
That's gonna be pretty inescapable.
But for example, in the role of public safety officer, the mayor determines what is in the annual report from the chief, from the police department. So I know this because we were discussing the ATV data and how we might align it into the annual report that the mayor gets. So the public safety officer, one of the things that they do is determine what is reported on in a formal capacity in, or more than annually, if they want more frequent reporting. Just to give an example of what a public safety officer might do.
So another layer of this is to, I think, look at. All right, cities with city manager forms of government. Do they have a separate director of public safety, or does that tend to go with the city manager's office? I mean, there's a lot of permutations of how city government can work. If we're really fundamentally thinking about changing what we do in Binghamton, then I think we need some more comps, see what's going on elsewhere. I know we've got Ithaca as kind of a, I don't want to say experiment in progress, but work in progress, like.
I mean, there's most of the West Coast.
Right, and many younger municipalities, many western municipalities just went with city manager.
I think I mentioned to you that I was speaking in a university class remotely in Texas, and the professor told me he looks at the form of government to see if it's a manager, city manager, strong council form of government before deciding where to go to move. Based on his experience.
And why is that?
They're just better in cities.
Okay. I like that. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Anybody else have any other questions before we move to the next?
I can't remember if you had any comparable cities that have this.
Yeah,
Public
we have
safety.
the New York State did. I'll dig it up again and
Okay.
send it.
Send it over to
Yeah,
us.
there's-
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Alumni's been talking about this from pretty much day one.
Well,
So-
well, not the public safety part.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a management part.
Right.
The city manager is a more common topic. I don't know if I've heard about this idea. with the-
Do you guys want to move to the next RL?
Well,
I
you-
mean,
I mean,
the,
I think we're bleeding over to it anyway.
Okay, yeah, I'll just introduce it again. RL 24-151. It's an ordinance to amend the City of Binghamton Charter to a city manager council form of government. So one of the questions I had with this, John, is how could we implement this without being politically biased? So I think that's one of my main concerns, because,
I think it's most of us.
yeah, so, right now, it's a Democratic council, but we're not sure what's gonna happen in the next, come around, it might be a Republican-led council. So do you have any ideas of how this could be implemented without being politically biased?
Well, the only people that would be interested in the preservation of the mayor's office that is currently structured are people that want to run for mayor, probably, you know what I mean? Because as far as experience goes, you'll get a nice big resume or CV. The candidates will lay it on the table, and then you check their references, and either they're what they say they are, or they're not. And either they have the ability to execute things. See, I think what's happened in Binghamton is, well, I know what's happened in Binghamton is one mayor stuck with the other mayor's mistakes. And, you can go backdated from urban renewal. And they try the best they can. This idea that experience, well, one guy runs for mayor, I have the experience, and well, you'll get an experienced guy, so that's off the table, as city manager. The thing that I wouldn't do is I wouldn't talk it to death, I wouldn't focus, I would do what you have to do legally required to get it on the ballot. And then if it passes, you can take that time and energy into the execution of it. email. If you spend too much preliminary time, if it turns into like a dog and pony show and everything, you know, it was like tournaments. It's the same deal. Where, you know, you can't have tournament, you can't entertain the possibility of tournaments. It won't pass, and it passed overwhelmingly. So that would be the idea behind it. I mean, there's a shortage of people that want to run for mayor and have the money to, I mean, I know Jared borrowed 50,000 with his mom, I think it was, you know, to run for mayor. So there's a shortage of money and people that think there's other qualified people that would love to run the mayor and would do a darn good job, but they're not gonna put themselves out there. I'm not knocking on doors or anything, but they're not gonna put themselves out there because they don't need the tension and the thing, but you know, if you look at the school system and the superintendent, there's a good example. The superintendent serves at the pleasure of the board hires a superintendent, you know. This is essentially the same deal. The guy will have a contract and, you know, or the lady, and, you know, I mean, I just don't see why we're stuck with this, and there's no but. I mean, to be honest with you, the last mayoral election was a complete farce in terms of the over involvement of the police union. An absolute travesty, in my opinion, you know, where the police department is going, and I told you this. Guy got up in Scranton and said, and they were talking about the city as a whole. And he said, you know, are there really that many retired school teachers and retired law enforcement that this city is totally in that direction and not in, and it's like here, you know, we got 45,000 residents, most of them, if the university closed up tomorrow, most of them wouldn't be affected. And if anything, I'm here for I identify with the residents. I don't care how long they've been here, you know, but there's people that are 10 years, 20 years, all their lives. So that's what I'm trying to get to here. I'm not trying to preserve this aristocracy that we have. It's failed. It's failed.
Besides like the political element, which I think is valid, I think the part that I looked up, that's like easy to remember is it's a study that indicated that the governments with like the city manager style are 10% more efficient. And it's just like, if anybody could make the promise of delivering like 10% more efficiency in anything, it's like, let alone like a city government, that's a huge victory. So I thought that was really compelling. I obviously need to do more research than that, but it seems like everything I've read so far is positive.
Yeah.
And I understand it better. Like the school board is a good example, or the other analogy I saw was like the nonprofit board, the executive director answering directly to the board. But it seems compelling enough to like have a harder look at, and it seems like there's more cities converting to city manager, and I don't know if there's cities leaving city manager to go towards mayor, council.
There are some that are
Are
considering it, yes,
Okay.
and that's for the kind of like the letter that you have. The idea that some residents in communities with council plus city manager feel frustrated that the person that's in charge is not an elected person. Right, so it feels for some people, they feel like it feels undemocratic. They'd like to vote for the person that they perceive as the top. Directly, as opposed to through voting for city council and just city. So there definitely are cities that are looking at the other direction. The other thing that I came across when discussing with various councils, now I'm gonna blank. It's the ability to change. So one in Colorado that I was talking to, you know, they've had the same city manager for 20 some years. It provides a lot of stability. Overall, I think the council member I talked to there liked it, but she did mention that it doesn't, if you want to do any sort of larger change, it's hard to move. The system becomes less movable, was her perspective. It's more entrenched. You don't have kind of the political headwinds going this way and that way. You kind of have a that was her perspective on it, was that it was more kind of locked in and that you weren't gonna do kind of big changes.
Is this more toward the elected, having the elected?
Because you have this,
city
you
manager?
get dependent on a city manager that you're paying and they have their expertise. The elected officials are not as necessarily experienced in that line of thing, and you get dependent on somebody who's coming in with a particular knowledge, and things aren't, and they've been there for 20 years. They're not, it's not the same as the kind of the churn that you have, where you have mayor and council kind of doing a dance and the party shifting back and forth and new ideas coming in and out.
An outside person that's not elected, a person who actually have had experience with city management, to be being in city management. So sometimes this might not mean that you might not be looking in-house in the state, you might have to actually.
So
look other
Ithaca
staff.
did hire their former
Other
mayor.
city.
So Ithaca's city manager is their former mayor, is my understanding. So a former mayor from talking to a council, yeah.
Well,
That was my understanding on it. Maybe I got it wrong, but my understanding is that they hired a former mayor of Ithaca as their city manager who had the credentials and the experience of being mayor in the previous form of government.
Don't know if that would work for us, because, I mean, to be honest, not all the mayors were all that great,
Yeah.
so.
I'm just trying to throw out some of the
That was
discussions that I've had on this
anything,
to give some
Ithaca,
context.
Ithaca, but still that involves a certain. kind of
Current
political
city
aspect.
chief of staff and longtime common council.
Oh, was it past council member? Sorry, past council member, not past mayor. But they were a past elected official. Thank you for correcting me.
No problem.
But having.
No, it's
Even if
facts
having
are
an
important.
former elected official. It still feels like there's a questionable aspect of having somebody being influenced by someone at one point. I don't want what I want is somebody non-partial. That's my opinion. I don't want anybody in there to be Republican or put it this way, they're political. They choose to have whatever political side for the agenda, but mostly is I want this person to be a person that is working for the city, and understands what needs to be done for the city, as opposed to what a political party would help them out in the process.
So then basically, what we're saying is that the mayor's role would be a ceremonial thing?
Yeah, it would be mostly ceremonial.
In some
So who would be in
places,
charge of the budget, like the city
Would-
manager?
and
Oh,
council,
In conjunction with the manager.
Yeah,
in some areas, I believe the mayor is just the council president. The council, like,
Whoever's president of city council is the mayor.
is the mayor for ceremonial things. And,
Okay.
in some places, while most of the council is part-time, the person who's elected mayor or president of city council would be the person who is full-time. So they're doing ceremonial stuff as well as council stuff. And that's one model. There's obviously lots of models.
Well, you know, if you look at the social media pages of a mayor or any public, that gives you a clue, not only on their timeline of what they're doing every day, but what they consider to be important. And what's left out is the real nuts and bolts of the city. And, you know, I mean, if you go to a board of directors meeting, say for a company, you know, produces tools or whatever, or, you know, sales up, sales down, advertising it, you know, we're doing this, we're getting sued here. There's not a lot of that. There's no nuts and bolts. It's us smiling and shoe shines and this development and that development, you know, if that's what's on their mind on the social media page, then we're in for continued trouble.
don't agree with that. I mean, like this was just want somebody non-partial. In a sense of ideally putting the forefront of the city as something is more important than whatever political party they're affiliated with. Cause even if you have somebody Republican and they have that mindset of doing so, that's what they're for that. But unfortunately, a Republican Party is not that great with how we're doing things now, but I feel that ceremonial aspect of the mayor and North City Council and city management is the best way to go. And the fact it's much more efficient. I don't know if people get tired of me talking about it here. Because I'm from a different place where that does work. Having a city manager actually does work and working with the council. And by having it, things do get moved, things do change, and it seems to be more apparent. From my hometown, so that's why when I knew all this in the beginning, in February, that I've been like, this is something we need, because this makes no sense. And I've said this before, I've never seen a city work. It's like for a city to be broken, for it to work. I've never seen that until now being here.
But what about some people who say, if it isn't broke, then don't fix it?
Because those are the ones that hold the power, those are the ones that hold the coffers. That's the reason why. And that's the whole point, because whatever it works for them, it don't work for the rest of the people who actually live it. It works for them. It don't work for anybody else but them.
And that was same thing was said about term limits,
Mhm.
you know, oh, there's an election, there's a, because one guy wanted more than 3 terms. The Albany mayor, I forgot his name, Corning, was it? He was in there for like life, so so. People don't want this change, but I don't know how many people don't want this change. I think it's a very narrow group that, just like with term limits, that will be very vocal, and they'll write letters to the newspaper, or what if there's still a newspaper. But that, that's their agenda. I mean, at the end, you need someone that, you hear about that, well, we got $100 million, $125 million enterprise here. You need someone on that level that can run that. You certainly don't want somebody that, wouldn't get an entry level positions, in a smaller enterprise,
This is also a way to think of how this works for City Hall. With all the things that we have going on in City Hall, and that is deficient in. This would be very helpful to have someone to help manage and make sure that these things are not correct, and working with the control and doing these things. I just want this to work. I want all this to work. And I just want City Hall and the government to work, and it hasn't been working. It hasn't been working for the past 20 years that I lived here. And then there's other people noticing and always a change of hands, and somebody is trying to correct it. Personally, so like I said, and it never gets done. Nothing gets done. Nothing gets done there. It's only pity. It's just not anything that's. We tried. Look at what we're doing right now. Look at what we're doing right now. We have but since day one, we have been in conflict with the mayor. Day one. And this doesn't make any sense. We have in conflict, and we've been putting in legislation that we're trying to achieve, and then yet we get vetoed on the things that seems the right thing to do. We need to do right by the people. Not right by the mayor, what he feels and who he holds his allegiance to.
Beauty of having it be a referendum is like, we wouldn't be really deciding it. People are.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
people decide, correct.
So what is the next step?
Selling.
I mean, I think you guys wanna discuss it some more, do some more research and then come back for maybe another one more before we decide to like vote on it, I think.
Well, I mean, there's the first question would be, as John pointed out, when can referendums happen in the city of Binghamton? Can it just be, it doesn't, must it be a general election?
Mhm.
Or can it be a different election or a special election?
I can certainly look into if that's
So
a
that's-
legal possibility, and then you guys can
Right.
decide if it's what's a
So-
budgetary possibility.
If it's a general election, we've already timed out for this year, so we have time to do whatever. If it's, if it can be a special election or primary or what have you, then that opens up the possibility of moving faster.
Mhm. I will look into that with Corporation Council for you,
Thank you.
no problem.
The one article I think I read was that like the referendum for the Ithaca passed like 3 years before the person got in. So it was like, even if the referendum passes, they have a long time to work out nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I
And-
imagine it has to be termed with the mayor's term or something like that.
Maybe they take that into their referendum. But, yeah, and the other thing I was gonna say, there's like organizations out there that are just like very pro city manager, so you can reach out to them. It's like, do you want, or you think you wanna, are you an engaged citizen that thinks like this is good for your city, this is how you like get it done. So I'm interested in reaching out to see like what they have to offer.
Do you think someone might be willing to come and speak via Zoom or something at a council meeting?
Yeah.
Or at
Probably,
a committee
Maybe,
meeting? That's what
yeah.
I mean, yeah, council meeting.
Would it also be beneficial to not to seek someone outside of New York State?
I think the organizations are probably nationwide.
that's what it
Mhm.
seems.
Is it nationwide? Okay.
I'll see what they offer. No, I can't remember the name, but it's just some acronym.
You mean the New York Conference of Mayors isn't
No.
gonna be behind us?
But yeah, I mean, I think I'd be interested in seeing just like a nice comprehensive list of all the different models.
Cool, I guess, so basically.
All in one place.
Yeah, the first step, I think we'll figure out exactly regarding the referendum situation. And then after that, we can start to do our research and then have another committee meeting. Once we know like what the timeline is on this. And then after that, we can have another committee meeting and then if we feel for it, then bring it.
Alrighty, sounds like a plan.
I'll leave you with this, the immortal words of the last congressman that was from the city of Binghamton, Edwin Arthur Hall. City council is where the action is, and that's after he was in the chamber with Roosevelt declaring war in 1941. So the change is here, it's not over there.
Thank you, John.
Have a good day.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And, Sophie should be on her way for the following discussion.
Okay.
I'll let her in.
Okay. Two things. I mute this.
You know, we're in a public meeting.
Oh, okay. Hang on.
It
It wasn't bad.
You
No,
can
it was
step
nothing
out.
bad. Yeah, we
You
could,
can step out.
yeah, it's nothing bad. I just had to, someone asked me a question to tell everybody, so just had to, I'll remember that, but I'm gonna write it down. It's not political or anything. So, regarding something.
Regarding a rental, right?
No, I'll write it. It's just an event. It's nothing bad. It's just. Not.
So Nate, are you taking lead on bringing more information or setting up the speaker and or setting up the speaker?
I can help with that too. Like, I don't want you to, I can,
Oh,
I don't wanna like leave and then.
Yeah, no, that's
you know,
fine, yeah, that's
Leave
fine,
I'll CC you on an email, probably.
that's fine, yeah.
Sound
that's
good.
fine.
or lead on what?
On
just-
the
Just
follow-up information for the next meeting on this topic.
Yeah, so.
Cause I didn't wanna leave and then nobody is actually taking an action item. And then everyone thinks everyone
Yeah.
else is doing something.
Yeah.
It sounded like from the meeting that Nate was willing to take lead, so I wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
that was
that's
the
fine, I can.
agreed
pop that.
understanding.
Here's that, can you just pass that around?
Okay. Oh,
I said especially you.
I didn't RSVP for anything because of childcare stuff. Me. I got the.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome.
Painting of the garden.
Yeah.
Hey,
Where would you like it?
wherever.
Sarah's.
This is Sarah, so there's one at the end and there's one over here.
Well, it's kind of weird maybe that they're separated.
Yeah.
I can move. You guys wanna?
Yeah, do you guys wanna move closer, Nate can come down here, I think.
Yeah, just sit here, Alright.
Now that you've gotten you know.
I'm not gonna-
Sophie, your hair looks cute.
Thank you. It was up all day. Is that your daughter?
Yeah, it's my little chunk. She's so annoying. Oh, Ron, sorry.
Where did Robert? He's adorable.
Okay.
I think he's back to the restroom.
I have to head out in like 5 to 10 minutes for
Yeah.
camp pickup.
This
Yeah.
meeting has a deadline of 20 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
Full
Do you wanna-
disclosure.
Do you wanna start really quick, even though Robert isn't here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just basically a discussion regarding the rental registry. And it just like talking to people, kind of different places, they were talking about, I think, I don't know if you saw, this is from Albany. And
I did not see that.
I'll show you guys there, kind of, that's just the form that they have, and I think it's just kind of,
That's a description.
yeah, just kind of a description of what kind of like a form that they have for the rental registry. I have the other, but, so it just like brought up, you know, like my brain, like, we don't have one. But, we do have one. Yeah, we do, but, I just had a few questions, and I think you already got them already, like, I think one of them is like, we have one, but why did we stop enforcing it? Is it,
So I think the main roadblock, and Tito, correct me if I'm wrong, has been manpower.
okay,
From what I understand, I had a conversation with my predecessor because this was enacted back in 2013, and I think it was always like a budgetary manpower issue. And that would also be twofold, right? So not only a budget for additional manpower to enforce the registration, inspection, field complaints, stuff like that, but also finding people to fill those positions. Because we have a number of unfilled positions at the city already.
yeah,
So I think that was the first stumbling block. And from what I understand, in 2013, this was passed knowing that that would be the major hindrance. It was passed anyway, and then there was never a provision made to kind of fill that funding gap. The second, that there are, some legal concerns, and I just got the questions yesterday morning, so I would need a little more time to kind of flesh out. But the main Court of Appeals case on rental registries centers around, kind of signing off on preemptive warrantless searches. So that was the main legal issue that there's been a lot of case law. So we'd want to comb through our existing law, make sure it was compliant with. That case was back in, I think, the 80s, so the last 35 years. of
So
case
what
law.
about like health departments going into restaurants, like those, that's a preemptive warrantless search, right? They're going in, they're inspecting.
I don't know what their regulations are. I haven't had a chance.
I'm just, it seems similar, right?
Yeah, I'm
But you're
just,
seeking a license to
license to rent, do we have to make it a license to rent? To make
And I
it from
can
rent?
send everybody the cases that I've been able to pull in the last day or so, and
That'd be great.
you guys can take a look at those. So I think it's kind of a twofold issue, is legal compliance, but also manpower. I mean, Tito, I don't wanna
Yeah, no,
get into
that's,
deeds on this more than me.
that's what saying, I've heard you saying that it's a personnel issue that I think, Chris Schneider was
I was
asked,
gonna say, is Chris a better person to have in here, maybe to,
well, he was asked. I don't remember when, a couple of years ago, and he looked into it, and he found that he would need to double his staff to be able to manage a program similar to what Rochester is doing, but on a smaller scale, or scale to Bennington. And that's a challenge, obviously, in terms of salaries, benefits, but also just filling the positions. And
I
what
did,
this,
oh, I'm sorry, Tito. I did want to suggest something that is available now, though. There is, code does offer a pre-occupancy inspection. So if someone is moving into a location and they want to make sure that it's compliant, or they want kind of a baseline to make sure they get their security deposit back or whatever, I mean, code offers those to make sure that wherever you're going into does not have existing code issues or condemnation issues or whatever. That's my understanding.
yeah, tenants can request pre-occupancy inspections. They don't always do that, obviously, but.
But not. Which. Goes to that, if they don't always do that, so. If they don't always do that, that doesn't help out the situation. When I make it.
Well, I think citizens don't always know that they can request that. So I think getting the word out that, you know, we want to make sure, the city wants to make sure that people aren't living in, you know, unsafe or condemned properties too. You know, that was kind of how Tito and I got asked down here today, is that concern has come up internally in City Hall. We want to make sure that people are safe, you know, and not living in condemned building, you know. So, I mean, Tito and Greg, you all are zoning officer, are great resources for that as well.
If the manpower is a problem. And having somebody to come and look at apartments and people find out. Wouldn't that be still an issue of manpower?
I mean, it could jam them up a little bit, but the reality is they're requiring it for every rental property.
Every
It's
3
still-
years.
It's still gonna be more taxing than it being done upon request by tenants.
This will get done every 3 years.
Well, that's what the law
That's what
says,
the law
but of
says.
course we could change that and make it every 5 years to make it less intensive.
And I
I mean,
think
we could
given,
do
given
things.
that it's a major undertaking that contemplates the clerks registering everybody, people coming forward to register, it might be worth speaking to a jurisdiction that has successfully enacted this and is doing it, like Syracuse or Albany, you know, and kind of taking a page out of their book about how they brought this from, you know, genesis to practice kind of thing.
I have 2 questions in, all of the registration information gathering aspect of this, not the inspection portion, but all the information gathering and stuff. We're probably a dozen years past when this was first considered. How much is all of that effort buying us at this point compared to what we already have access to in current databases and what have you? I mean, we're pretty good at finding owners, we're pretty good at billing people for things, I mean, how much more information is all of this actually gathering, or is it just replicating stuff we already have access to? And then, that second question right on my head. What was my second question? Go ahead and answer my first question.
I mean. I think it could yield useful information. Sometimes deal with LLCs, we don't know who the principals are. And we have to figure that out after the fact. If there's some kind of enforcement action taken, or they have to go to court. This can get that information up front.
So, I mean, like now.
Right.
New York is at least now requiring disclosure of names and of LLC owners for property sales. But I don't know, I mean, there may be pushback, there may be legal questions about, I mean, disclosing home addresses and business phone numbers and stuff, and home and business phone numbers, that's called doxing now, right? Like, we're against that. I don't know. just. Concerned. Still don't remember my second question, sorry.
I was
Come back.
wondering, how many code reports per year are from rental properties, because if there's a lot of them. That would have just been caught in this process rather than. Having to be reactive, then it's always better to schedule work rather than react. So that would be one question, and then the other was, how many fires are in rental properties per year? Because obviously part of this is fire code. Which building fires and stuff costs us money and legal stuff and all that.
My other question
Yes,
was dovetailing with the lead registry
Yes.
thing.
yes,
Which
has
may
the-
or may not be coming down the pike.
it is from my check-in.
My chicken said there might not be funding.
Interesting. So I know that I did an introduction to one of the members of your office. Have you been in communication with the county health department on the lead rental registry?
I have
No.
not.
Oh,
personally,
okay.
no. But we could certainly look into whatever questions you have. I
I
think
made
it
the
just-
connection with your code attorney.
Okay.
Months ago now,
Because that's a state effort, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
that's focusing
and it's.
on 13101, 13105,
Yeah,
specific
Yep,
area. codes.
area codes,
Yeah.
and they were hoping to shrink it just to the. West side, I believe was my update.
Well, they basically have heat maps of
Yes, lead
high
issue
concern areas.
based on lead testing of children,
That's another thing to consider dovetailing with
right,
our general rental registry.
and they were notified of this meeting. I did reach out to the health department to let them know we're discussing this.
So it's state or county?
The state working with the county health department.
There's certainly a lot of information and a lot of available programs, and I just think it depends on what you want to accomplish. And then once we know kind of what the goal is, I think it's, creating some sort of link between the mayor's office, council, potentially the county, depending on, again, what you guys want to accomplish, and how you want to see things go. I mean, it could start small, it could take time to research and do it once and do it right kind of thing, depending on the scope of what you're looking at.
And you said that, I know Albany, so I'm gonna dig some more into Albany's rental registration. And then Syracuse, you said was another one,
And in Rochester.
in Rochester,
Syracuse,
Buffalo has.
Buffalo, okay.
Basically everyone.
Are they doing inspections at this rate?
Buffalo does have inspections as part of their program. I did see that they seem to have a rental registration office. So they have a separate department that handles this.
Okay.
They have a lot
Does
more
every 3
property
years.
too.
Albany was every 2 years, you said? Does anyone have a sense of how long an inspection would actually take? I know it would vary to some degree depending on the condition of the building and how long someone would actually have to inspect it. Because $50 seems maybe a little small.
for a rental registry inspection.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think I would go back to the jurisdictions that have the rental registry and maybe have a conversation
Yeah.
with them about where they got the program from, what their legislation looks like, how it was implemented, their budget, how many officers they have. I mean,
Is there
Because
any
I don't-
history on this law? Maybe that's a quick question for,
What do you mean?
because this is pre-videos.
Produced.
Like, yeah, if there's any minutes that would say like what they were looking at. Minutes are, I know minutes are hard to
Be to look into it and produce whatever might.
was
be
documented,
relevant to that.
yeah.
I don't know currently what
Yeah.
is documented around that.
But it's probably audio. not
Yeah.
video.
The audio has been very hard to track down. Oh, but I will definitely find whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of curious what the,
Mhm.
My understanding, at least about Syracuse's program, whether it's, can't remember if it's rental registry or licensing, is that it's, they have it, but there's no way to like force someone to register, so it's like it's beneficial for the people that are allow. Allow for the inspection, and I think it like looks good for them to have that inspection, because they can show it to a tenant, and be like, "Look, we're on the good landlord list, so I think part of this is, also like incentivizing getting your properties like registered. Whether, so I think there's like you could do like a carrot on a stick where it's like, okay, this is a A+ landlord, and then there's like the opposite of that is like, this is the guy who has the most outstanding code violations in the city, that becomes the other motivator. I think the one that I saw in Minneapolis that had like a really comprehensive like database that like tracks. It gives like the landlords a score, so if you're like looking to rent out a place, you can like look them up, and then. It was really visually appealing, but it's a lot of data management. But that's kind of what, in an ideal world, we could get there, but I think it's like, it would be a heavy lift to get to that. Like visualization off the bat, I think the first part would be starting to get people registered. What we have. But even with the lack of people like just showing up to get things registered, it's positive. Having landlords. On that register. That's my understanding. Even if it's like you only have 10% people like showing up to do it, it's still helpful for residents or the courts or whatever.
Have any idea how many certificates of code compliance the city issues a year, and how many buildings?
How many, what was the question?
How many are the city typically issue a year, or how many, what percentage of the city's buildings have been issued in the last 5 years or 10 years? I'm trying
Like
to
a
get it.
certificate of compliance?
Yeah,
They usually do that upon request. A lot of times it's part of,
a
like
sale.
a real estate
Yeah.
transaction, yeah. We can find that number.
I'm just wondering how big the job is initially. Yeah.
We asked BCGIS to give us the number of properties where the property owner has a mailing address that is not the property itself. Just to get like a rough number of how many rentals we think we have, and it's a little over 4,100. I mean, it's a big margin of error there probably, but it's a couple thousand is what we get in terms of number of rentals. Rental properties, and then each property might have multiple.
Who knows how many units do it?
I guess we'll, just follow up, I guess, on those questions, and then when we come back with our findings, we'll meet again.
Yeah.
Would you like to adjourn the meeting?
Oh.
I'm not gonna end it without you saying it out loud.
I'd like to call this meeting
Adjourn.
adjourned.
Great.
So